and welcome to the Motorsport Coaching Podcast, sponsored by Motivate Training and Management. This is a podcast where we talk to drivers and industry experts to help you maximize your performances on and off the track. Let's get started with today's show. Hi guys, and welcome to episode 25 of the Motorsport Coaching Podcast. I am your host, Belinda Risley. It's the last one for the year. I hope you all have had a very exciting 2018 and have already started planning 2019. To help you start, I'm talking today to Damon Hill from the Signature Series Group. We're going to be talking everything to do with sponsorship proposals, and at the end, we'll be talking about our new workshop starting January 19th in Melbourne. Now going into the Christmas break, it's a great time to go back and listen to some of the old episodes. So if you're wanting to catch up on everything to do with sponsorship, we have episode 22 to do with sponsorship agreements, episode 19, activations with the lovely Beck Burns, and episode number 12 with Paul Mann to do with budgets. Of course, going into the new year, if there's anything specific you'd love to hear, go to our website, motivatetraining.com.au, leave a review and send us a request about topics you'd love to know more about, whether it's interviewing drivers, whether it's more of behind the scenes that you wanted to hear more about pit crews or anything like that. Let us know so I can try and get some guests on for you. Other than that, I hope to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Thank you for taking the time to listen to these podcasts. I do hope you're finding some value in them, and I hope they're getting better. As most of you know, this is way out of my skill set and comfort zone. And as you can hear from this intro today, anyway, just trying to keep it real. We do have a very exciting 2019 coming up. We've got some fantastic guests. We've got brand new sponsors starting from January 1. We're starting off the brand new year with Todd Hazelwood. We have Sam Mitchell, who's going to talk about social media. We've got Ryan Mobilia talking about branding and storytelling and how to showcase that. They're the first three coming up in the new year, and lots more guests. Again, guys, have a very Merry Christmas and a safe New Year. So, welcome to the show, Damon.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me on, B.
Well, I'm very excited to hear about your story into commercial partnerships in motorsport. How did you get started?
So, I think, just a quick sort of step back, I've been a racer since I was 7, grew up in a family of racers, left school when I finished school, I should say, and, always worked in motorsport, and then, went to, took the next step to Europe and the USA, in my early 20s, and sort of, learned to, again, that sort of next level, if you like, about motorsport. Mm-hmm. After sort of doing all that, when I came back from there, I saw a need perhaps for a different approach on the way, we were going about sponsorship and just the commercial things within the sport here in Australia. And I think, that combined with perhaps some of my challenges as a young, teen or whatever in karting and dreaming of going to that next step, but not having any of the sort of tools or knowledge to understand, and really there wasn't that many resources around to do that. So that was another big sort of reason behind, putting the knowledge I'd learned together, because I thought, there's people need to know this, they need to understand it so they can get to the next level.
Yeah. And were you racing overseas, like you're saying, in Europe and America, or was that for holidays or study?
No, that was all working within the motorsport industry. So I worked at Silverstone for a little while in the UK there. Didn't really enjoy that, to be honest, but that's where my opportunity came to go to the US, into Indianapolis, and I worked there for 4 years within the motorsport industry, and fundamentally IndyCar and NASCAR.
Yeah, and you've just come back recently from Indy. What was your role over there?
Yeah, I've obviously have a pretty strong network over there. Have been, as I said, my initial times over there was sort of 2000, so it was a long time ago, and I go back every year and work the Indy 500, and so I've kept my my relationship and stuff up with with many of the contacts, and made many new ones on the journey, and so I was over there actually working with a client of mine that's looking to race the 500 in 2019, and there's a fair bit of work that goes into that, obviously, even to just be eligible, to be able to participate or qualify. So that's from, I guess, an infrastructure standpoint, from licensing and all that aspects. But then, the significant role was to set them up commercially and, get all their ducks in a row with regards to their brand and their story, and, who it was going to ring true to. So, we've started to build that network for them and get them in a good position.
Very exciting. Was it an Australian driver?
No, it was not an Australian driver. I can confirm it was an American driver.
And I'd love to hear, what's the process in getting a license and applying? I thought anyone could. So yeah, I'd love to hear more.
No, it's it's actually become a lot more stringent in the very recent times. I mean, I guess ultimately, yes, you're right. I mean, you are correct. In the past, if you had the money, so to speak, and put the opportunity together with a team, you didn't really, you just needed to go through what they call rookie orientation there at the Speedway. And then if you passed the orientation, which was, sort of a multi-stage process at the Speedway, then they would allow you to qualify. And then obviously, you needed to qualify. Now there's actually a lot more criteria in place, as in what is your, what's your history in racing? You have to have a certain, like, they're almost rating it like the FIA with regards to, it's called experience points or whatever, and they've got different series that they rate differently, and things that they want you to have attained within those series. Not necessarily results. It's not about necessarily winning championships, but it's really from an experience perspective, and it's fundamentally drawn on to make sure that the drivers that are going out there have a level of skill. I mean, everything happens pretty fast at 240 mile an hour, so it's one of those places where I think, they've just really cracked down on it, because there is no margin for error there. And at the end of the day, they want to keep their drivers safe. And there's been some big accidents lately, and, drivers have been seriously hurt through it. And, they just need to continue to evolve.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting to hear. I guess from the Indies perspective, they're just wanting to make sure they've got the right competitive drivers out on the track for the big event.
Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I think the demand, for the last, if you go back in, for that event, being probably the single biggest it is the single biggest one-day sporting event in the world, with over 300,000 people in attendance. In the past, obviously, and the commercial climate, sometimes they've had to help promote to get a full field, in the early 2000s, and just because of those challenges, where now the economy is pretty good in the US, and it's not a challenge. And you've got drivers like Alonso and other big players wanting to come over, so they're not going to be challenged to get 33 cars on the grid anymore. So what their challenge is just to put out the best product, and that is bring the highest quality drivers you can to the event. So
yeah, and so Damon, through your experiences, saying working at Silverstone and obviously Silverstone and at Indy, what are some of the differences, if any, about international sponsorship and seeking sponsorship overseas? Is it easier, do you think, or harder, or what's your feeling?
I don't think it's necessarily harder from the standpoint of, well, let me reframe that. It's probably, the harder in countries that are smaller like us. And I mean smaller within regards to, just our, the amount of people we have and the amount of businesses we have. I mean, that really dictates if it's easy or not easy, but if, the level of difficulty. I mean, obviously, if you're in Europe, you have a lot more big companies that are at a level that can play in that space. If you're in, so I'll just stick on IndyCar for a second. Like, to run an IndyCar for a year, it's $7 million. Now, North America is a big country, so there's plenty of places there's plenty of companies that can certainly play at that level. Now, when we come here to Australia, if we use that as an example, to run a competitive supercar, you're at, a bare minimum of $2.5 million for an operation that's already, sort of now, and then we're competing against, and we're such a sport, heavy country, we're competing against the crickets and the football codes and, all those other codes too, which are more well known and perhaps, in some ways present, well, it's, better / different, opportunities, but we still only have quite a small commercial base with regards to businesses that can afford to, invest at that type of scale. And then that's irrelevance in the product we're putting out there. So I think that the process remains the same. It doesn't matter. I mean, you've got to have best practice sort of sponsorship processes in place, which wherever you are, it's irrelevant whatever language you speak, or that's just an expectation now from companies as to how people go about managing and delivering the benefits of a sponsorship relationship. So I don't think it changes. We're just challenged by the the commercial platform that we're in.
Mm. And what are your thoughts about competitors seeking local businesses sponsorship for a national based competition? Do you think there's pros and cons to that?
Look, I think
Like, I think it's harder, for example, like if you're seeking sponsorship from your local butcher, for them to get national exposure when they're not really going to get that return on investment, because someone from Shepparton isn't going to go buy meat from Townsville.
you hit the nail on the head there. It's how many places can that potential partner leverage. So to use your example, in a local city or town or whatever, if your events, obviously are just focused in that area, then clearly, if we use go-karting as an example here, and that's where the club's based, and you're doing a dozen meetings a year, and so that potential sponsor has the opportunity to leverage that relationship, in whichever way they see fit, a dozen times a year. That's very different to perhaps a series that we might say Toyota 86 series, let's say, and like any other series, they're on a national, as you said, on a national level. So maybe they only come by that area or that region, once during the year, and the media, and there's a lot of things, attributes potentially that sponsorship has that aren't really relevant at that point in time. Now, what there is, and I think what's important for people to remember, is that if you are based in that area, that there's all the things you can do outside of the actual event itself, that can be that can continually be done in between events and all those things, and that's where you have to focus in that situation and take the emphasis off. The emphasis shouldn't just be on the branding anyway. It's such a small part of sponsorship these days, but really look at the other resources that you do have that are going to directly add value to that sponsor, and say, okay, let's not focus so much on how many people are at events and all this type of stuff that's not really relevant. Let's focus on what do we do? Do we sit here and do half a dozen promotions a year directly and have the race car at your venue and with local papers and all that stuff that can be done that adds direct value? So it's horses for courses, I think, and you've just really got to think about what's going to work. So that local business or butcher, or whoever it is, could certainly get X amount of value out of it. It's just in a different format than a standard. Okay, well, we're just going to market your brand nationally, which is a big part of obviously what a national company would look for. So yeah.
And do you have any tips about making connections? I think that's the biggest question that I get on the Facebook pages. It's around about how do I know who to contact?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you almost need to take a step back and look into who you're relevant to and understand your brand and that type of stuff prior to trying to then make that decision of where am I going to go out to, because that will almost determine who you should be contacting and or who's going to have at least a level of interest, and there's a logical reason that you guys should be having a conversation. And then you can work depending on if you're looking on a national scale or local. Clearly, if you're looking on local, you can even get down to old school hitting the pavement and doing it, with a bit of a targeted approach as to whose doors you're pounding on. If you're going to do national or even international, depending on, again, what the opportunity is, then clearly you need to use tools like, like LinkedIn and those type of tools, but you have a clear defined path on, okay, it's these industry sectors, and then the companies that fall within these industry sectors are more likely to be interested in the product that and the opportunity that we're bringing to the table. So, again, it's about that research up front and really understanding and not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, which just, you can hit it as hard as you want all day long, and you can run around and open every door all day long, but you're going to waste a lot of time.
Yeah, and obviously we can talk about lots of different things when it comes to sponsorship, but today I'd love to focus on about the sponsorship proposal. And so what are your thoughts around a proposal? How important do you think it is?
I mean, I think it's I'm not going to say it's the most important. It's equally important, which is it shares equal number one importance with probably three or four other things, if I'm allowed to say it like that. I mean, ultimately, I've built a business around it. You also have built a business around, teaching, best practice amongst others. We're not the only ones out there in the industry here trying to obviously do that. And that's because there is a need. And that's really been driven by companies as sponsorship evolves so quickly. And so being able to understand the changes in what companies are looking for and then present that into a proposal is massively important. And I mean, it literally is, it's changing yearly, and evolving as companies get smarter and what they want to see and whatever. So I think having an up-to-date and clear understanding of a sponsorship proposal, being able to, get your message across quickly and is key. You probably only get 10 seconds or so to actually make that impression that you are, professional and you know what you're doing for that potential sponsor or the person reading it, the marketing manager or the sponsorship manager. So, you need to position yourself quickly in that space that you are, a professional, and what you've got is something worth reading on. And that's where, having a proposal that is succinct, is clear, is logical in its methodology of how you've laid it out, and you've thought about more so perhaps what the potential sponsor wants rather than what you want, which is the single biggest thing people get wrong, is key.
Yeah. And do you think most of the content should be in the actual proposal itself or in the cover letter? The question that they ask, the request of the sponsorship.
I think, for me, the sort of process of it is I've actually gone away. So, in our business here, what we do is we help people create what I call sponsorship overview documents initially. And so effectively that's that document that, because you've got to remember at this point in time, you don't actually know what that sponsor wants. So I guess the answer to the question be with regards to that is in the document is just going to be that sort of sharp, succinct 8 to 10 pages, which hits on key points that aren't tailored. At that point in time, it's not tailored. It's just key points that show that it's a quality opportunity. With that, the introduction, I think it's a process. You talk about a letter or an email or whatever, and there's no doubt that has to go along with it. But there's also those 2 or 3 steps before where you're building rapport with that person, even before sending it out. So, I mean, if I don't recommend to anyone sort of just having a name and then sending completely cold, without any type of conversation in some way, shape, or form beforehand, sending out a letter and sponsorship document, because it's just you're going so deep and asking something that has no idea who you are. So quite often, a little bit of legwork, what it does is it allows you to build rapport. So then they're expecting to see it, and it goes on from there. And you've got a far better chance of them reading it. And then if you've got that great document, they've actually given it the time to go, oh, he sent me this, and she said she was going to send it to me. Yes, I'm expecting it. Oh, yeah, that's interesting, and so on and so forth. And it just increases your chances of going through that process to get a chance to sit down with them and find out what it is they want far greater. Otherwise, you just don't get past as we know, you don't get responses from your emails, and that's just, it's almost like shell shock. I think that's when people try and jam proposals in there too quickly. and they just, they haven't sort of earned their stripes and shown that they respect that person's time to get them to, spend time to look at what they want.
Yeah. And so if a competitor is looking to create a proposal themselves, what are some things they need to consider to include? Or what do they need to know before creating a proposal?
Look, we touched on it, very briefly. I think the most important thing a competitor can do straight up is understand their brand and their product and what it is they're offering. So even, it's hard to put stuff into a proposal if you don't actually understand fully what it is you're offering. It's actually almost impossible. So step one always has to be to go through and understand really what your brand is and what your brand offers. Then you move into the proposal, and I think first stages are just clearly defining the strengths and attributes of what the opportunity offers, and just talking it up, without sort of rambling on too much, which I think I'm probably guilty of right here. But I mean, again, you've got to be quick. You've got to be punchy, and just get those details out there to keep them interested. And so, don't ramble on. Don't ramble on is the biggest key, and have a clear path. Like we have a structure, in the way we do every sponsorship proposal. So there's a logic from page to page to page. There's a logic to the length. All those aspects, we think about to just give it the optimum chance of success. So, and one of the great books out there that I would honestly recommend to anybody that's interested and just wants to learn some more about those basics is a book written by someone that's a little bit of a mentor of mine, to be honest, and she's just fantastic in the sponsorship industry. And her name is Kim Skildon Reid, and it's the Sponsorship Seekers Toolkit, 4th edition that she wrote. And the logic that's in that book from anyone, I don't care if you're a 10 years of age or 50 years of age, I would, it's a great way for people to learn how to rethink or think about going about sponsorship.
Fantastic. Thanks for that tip. I'll put that recommendation in today's show notes. So if anyone's looking for it, head over to iTunes and look up Motorsport Coaching, and you'll find today's show notes and the link to Kim's toolkit.
Yeah.
So, Damon, what happened when they say, yes, we're interested? What's the next process?
Well, I mean,
over a bottle of champagne and
well, after you've celebrated this great and glorious success of getting a sponsor, then ultimately, it's about knuckling down and putting a process in place to execute on the key deliverables and what it is that sponsor, what their objectives are. So very quickly you just need to sit down and go, okay, the objectives are this is why they've partnered with us, what are we going to do? And this is a conversation you have with the sponsor, by the way. This isn't something you need to sit there and sort out wholly and solely. It's sit down and go, okay, how are we going to execute on this? It's not overly difficult, because the sponsor's going to know what they want and you're going to know what you can do and deliver. And then there's going to be all the other stuff in between. So it's getting that game plan clearly written down, and so nobody gets confused on either side as to what the other expects of them. And so just get that clear picture down and a game plan and stick to it. And, I think that alone will provide a very strong level of success in the sponsorship, for the bits that you can control.
Agree 100%. And what about if they say no? Do you have any tips or tricks about overcoming objectives and on how to look after or nurture the contact at that stage?
Yeah, look, I think, yes, I do. I do. I think too frequently as sponsorship seekers, we get a no and then we just walk away, when really a no is honestly just, depending on where it is in the conversation, it's going to be a natural, I guess, answer initially from someone is, oh, I'm not sure, no, like you can't expect that they're going to fall in love with it the minute it turns on their desk. So you have to go through that process. So handling objections and looping back around and sort of the worst thing you can do is front load, I think, your sponsorship proposal. And by that, I mean, the worst thing you can do is put everything out there and then have nowhere to go, because what you need to do is reaffirm with that person or go back and understand why they're saying no. Is it because they don't have funding? Is it because they're unsure of, how they can make it work? There's a all myriad of things there. A lot of the time, short of it just purely being, it could, because if you've already vetted the people that you're going to, then you've got something that's of a value at a level to them. So maybe it needs to be re-explained and talked about in a slightly different manner. So no's are quite often just easy ways to deflect. I really don't have time to talk about it, or I can't focus it. So respectfully, you need to try and ask that next question. Go, okay, but understand what you're saying to me, but do you like the idea of what I'm proposing? And then normally that will bring out some more reasoning behind what was that no. And if they're just like, no, B, I don't like what you're proposing, I'm not interested, thanks, go away, then okay, that's probably end of story. But normally that they'll just be like, look, I just, I don't have time right now, or I can't think about, okay. And now you understand what the objection is and you can work around it. So it's not a no, I don't like what you got. It's just, hey, there's some other things we're going to work around at the moment. And then you continue to do that. And I promise you, over my years of doing this, there's been sponsorships that I've closed that I would honestly say I've had 3 or 4 no's on the journey. And by understanding the no's and helping them come up with solutions to those no's, they ended up saying yes and getting something that was really valuable to them, that they actually got a lot of value out of. So no doesn't always mean no.
No, that's right. And they say it takes around like 7 to 9 touch points in order to make a sale. So it's very similar when it comes to gaining sponsorship as well. That connection, and it's forever like nurturing the prospect as well through different means. I always try and recommend the guys and girls to keep them in the loop, to communicate with the prospect through, race updates, newsletters, emails and stuff like that, just to keep that conversation going over and over.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, a CEO of a company many moons ago just made a comment to me, and it's stuck with me ever since. And his comment was, "The squeaky wheel gets the attention."
Mm-hmm.
It's true. I mean, if you're out there and you're communicating, whatever the news is, as far as, but if you're just in front of people, some people do a really good job of that, and then when you do approach that potential sponsor or whatever, you're already 2 or 3 steps down that line of, they feel like they know you a little bit. They've seen you, they've read little bits here and there maybe about you before you'd even met them. So communicating with the corporate market in some way, shape or form via tools like LinkedIn and things like that, I believe is invaluable, because you never know when that person's going to enter into your world. And then, oh yeah, I read something about you, 12 months ago or whatever. And now there's automatically a level of rapport. So it's not a cold, what you thought was a cold entrance isn't.
Mm. Obviously, Damon, you and I could talk all day about sponsorship. It's one of our favourite subjects. It is
Absolutely.
our well-being. James, tell us a little bit about Signature Series Group. What do you guys actually do? Is it just sponsorship? And how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, we are 100% focused on sponsorship, and that's across, sports, as well as, things like festivals and causes and all those things. We basically work with brands or assets to just go through those basic best practice things, understand where your values are and what you are. Create and work on creating a document that aligns and best showcases all those values and attributes, help with regards to processes in making and building your network in those key areas that are going to be important in those relationships. We also, to be honest, we also work on the other side. We work for companies as well, and spin it around 180 degrees, where companies will have objectives and they're like, okay, how do we know if there's an asset out there that's going to best align with our objectives as a company? So we do work we do go both ways in the stream, and it's been great. As you said, I'm not. It's not only a business for me. I love it. And so we do it all day, every day. And yeah, I mean, if anybody's interested in even just having a chat, I mean, you can, like you, I'd love to have a chat about sponsorship. I can jump on our website, signatureseriesgroup.com, and just make a time. And I'd be more than happy to talk to anyone about any questions they have about sponsorship. And I just think that the more that as sponsorship seekers or sponsees that we can impart knowledge on them at some level to do it better and do it a little bit smarter, it actually brings the whole industry up as far as, sponsorship is a very valuable tool to companies when done right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I always say if we don't have sponsors, we don't have a sport. So that's why we invested a lot of time and money into it. Talking about questions, I put it on my Facebook group. Did anyone have any questions for you? And I've got some for you. Surprise.
There you go.
So Matt Payne, our friend who we've had on here as a guest before.
I know, Matt.
Yes, has asked, how hard is it to keep composure as an Indy 500 spotter?
It has its moments. It's funny. Matt was there a couple of years ago with Crusher and Matty Brabham, obviously for the entry, and I was working with a different team at the time, and I was with Andretti's. And yeah, so Matt and I have spent time at the track together. And look, it's a good question. It's very, you have to have 100% focus. Like, it's probably one of the, if I think about my day-to-day life, I'm always thinking of 2 or 3 things or whatever. I can categorically say when I go up in that spotter's stand, for a driver and for a team, there is absolutely zero room for anything else in your mind. So is it hard? No, it's just very, very focused, because you have someone else's life in your hands. And I don't think that's overstating the fact, that there's some, and I put a couple of pictures up over the journey of some of the things that I've had to look at coming down the back straight of the 500, like 5 wide with my driver in the middle. And, and you're trying to make decisions, and these cars are doing 240 mile an hour, and you're trying to stay at, kind of ahead and see what's going to happen. So it's a great question, Matt. And my answer to it is, if you stay focused, it's a very, very rewarding job. And I'm very proud to say that over all the years that I've done it, most years I've finished, and the only years that I haven't finished have been due to mechanical breakdown. So I believe that my record as a spotter of not crashing a driver is still, touch wood, and I hope I haven't jinxed myself for 2019, is still untarnished. And that's that's all we can do as different parts of as team members. That's my job, is to keep that driver out of trouble and out of accidents, and then maybe help for the performance, down the track, which I was lucky enough in 2017 to win that race with Takuma Sato. So that was a lifelong goal for me. So yeah, it's very rewarding.
Fantastic. Well, Matt's got one more question. What are the secrets to being a spotter, but also balance commercial sponsorship understandings at an event like the Indy 500?
Secrets to being a spotter. I'll answer that. It's a sort of a 2-part question, I guess. Look, the secrets to being a spotter is just, you've got to know the right people and be in the right place at the right time. And as I said early in our discussion here, I'd been in the US since 2000, and I was working in IndyCar, so I made relationships, and I wasn't a spotter, that wasn't my job back then, but I made relationships with people in key positions. And then actually the opportunity came up, and there's actually a very quick little story to this. Back in, I think it was 2000, the first Indian American IndyCar driver, Corey Witherell, was in the race, and it was a last minute put together deal. And so we supplied a lot of the parts and stuff, the company I was working for, and they needed a crew. Like, they literally did not have a crew. And this was 3 weeks, this was, in the first week of May, 2 weeks before the event. And so all of us from the shop that I was working in, North American Race Parts at the time, were like, okay. And most of the guys had experience in IndyCar, in some way, shape or form. And that was my first experience of actually working on a team directly during a race. And I actually did pit board, which was in that little channel, at Indy, where you've got the little channel between pit lane and which they now don't let anyone go out there. And let me just assure you, for anyone that doesn't think that standing a foot away from a car doing 240 mile an hour does not make the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
Is that why you don't have any now?
Exactly. It's amazing. So that's how I got into that, that was my passion then of actually being able to be part of a team. For me, it was about being part of a team, because I was always on the outside helping teams. So that's how I got there. And then to answer the question on the commercial side of things, it's I think it's just, I mean, Indy is a fantastic event as a whole. When you can say to a potential commercial partner, hey, would you like to come and partner with us at the single biggest world's one-day event, and showcase, your company, your brand, and execute your objectives around that. It's still very hard because it's very expensive. I mean, it's $1 million to run that one race. You're just not going to run it for less than $1 million. So it's a lot of eggs to put in one basket if you're a brand or a company. But by the same token, it also is one of those very unique events in the world that sits in a special space, and some companies just want to be seen in that area. So I think it takes just as much time. It does take just as much time and just as much effort, but you do have a really good asset to sell in the event itself, and then hopefully you've got a strong team, and driver and all the other combinations that you can sell down through the value proposition. But yeah, the event itself is really an A-class event. So people want to be involved. You just got to find it.
Yeah, so you are back now, Damon. So what's the plan for 2019?
What's the plan for 2019? Well, I was kind of thinking, B, that perhaps you and I should do a professional sponsorship workshop together.
I think that's a great idea. Let's
When
do
do
it.
When do you want to do it?
How does a Saturday, January the 19th sound?
Yeah, I'm pretty free on that day. That sounds good to me. Anyone think we'd discussed this before we started?
I know.
Oh, I couldn't keep a straight face. Sorry.
That's all right. How does Bayview on the park at Albert Park sound?
Sounds great. Look, I think it would be fantastic, to get together, you and I, and share not only some of the stories, but some of the knowledge that we've both come across over our journey in this industry, and some of the best practice elements, to talk to these people out here that are listening to your podcast and others, to help get along, because at the end of the day, I think we all have dreams and ambitions at varying levels, and to get to those dreams and ambitions, most of the time it's going to require some type of commercial assistance / sponsorship. So there's so many things that I think people can get from doing it properly, and that is to even live a life that maybe just dreaming about at the moment. If you understand the business of sponsorship, it will help you get a lot further on to make that potentially reality.
Awesome. So 9 to 5 sounds good for you?
9 to 5 sounds good for me, as long as you're organising the coffee before we start.
Oh, yes, definitely have coffee.
Good.
And we would definitely have a booking sheet on both of our websites. So you can head to motivatetraining.com.au/workshop, and it will be on the signatureseriesgroup.com.
Yep.
/workshop as well, and the links will be into the show notes. So yeah, as Damon was saying, guys, it's a great opportunity to come to this workshop. It's going to be very hands-on. Our objective at the end of the day is for you guys to have obviously a better understanding on what is sponsorship, but more importantly on how to gain sponsorship. And as you can hear, Damon and I are really passionate about sponsorship, and we want to help everyone as much as possible within the arena of motorsport, specifically for this workshop. So if you're interested, on Saturday the 19th of January in Melbourne, would love to have you along. So head to our website and book your seats today. And if you've got any questions, as I said, you can either give myself a call at Motivate Training on 1300 947 927, or contact Damon. So Damon, thanks very much for your time and expertise today. I really enjoyed it.
I had a great time too, Ben. Thanks for thanks for making the opportunity possible, and I'm looking forward to having to working with you and with all your connections and database. I think not only will we have a lot of fun, but we'll do a lot of good work together.
Fantastic. And no doubt we'll have you again on the show, and we'll have a different theme around sponsorships. You can pick it.
Cool. I love to chat, so let me know.
All right. Thanks very much, Damon.
All right. See you later.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to this week's show. I really hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Now, remember, all the show notes with the links and the specials mentioned in today's show are available over at motivatetraining.com.au. If you haven't already, I'd really appreciate if you could head to iTunes or Stitcher, type in Motorsport Coaching, subscribe, and leave us a review. Each week, I'll read them out and you'll go into a monthly draw to win a fantastic prize. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at motivatetraining.com.au or head over to our Facebook page at Motivate Until next time, take care.